And the same thing with ourselves. As we become more self-aware and we can stop all of that negative chatter, we can stop the negative self-talk, then we can get rid of the toxicity that we carry with us every day, because it eats away at not only your emotional health, but also your physical health.
Welcome to the My Future Business Show, where we get you in front of your best audience and keep you there. Not only are we interviewing the biggest names in business to help you become even more successful, we're inviting you to book your spot on the show to help you grow your business. So at the end of the call, make sure you fill in the interview application form at myfuturebusiness.com/interviews. Welcome to the My Future Business Show. My name is Rick Nusky. I am your host. It's just such a wonderful pleasure to be on the line with you. Without you as our guests and our audience, this show just wouldn't be as spectacular as what it is. And on that note, I'm on the line with Anita Washington. How are you, Anita?
I'm great. How are you?
Fantastically well. I say it every show, I'm positive of it, but I have 2 feet and a heartbeat, so I can't really complain.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. Look, I've been looking over your bio. You're involved in so much. And one of the things that I noticed was how you're doing some speaking work, and that always inspires me. But before we jump into that and your authorship and what you're doing with your business, I'd love to learn a bit about yourself. Would you mind sharing a little bit about your personal life with us?
Well, I am I guess you could say, a burnt out counselor. I, st- I started out in counseling. My bachelor's is in mathematics, and I have 2 masters, one in counseling and the other in contracts.
Right.
There's a contrast there.
Yep.
I counseled over probably a 10-year period, everything from 11-year-olds, 6th grade, all the way up to 55-year-olds, helping them with their own life skills and personal transformations.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Do you? I was just thinking about. I wanted to just go back to your qualifications. Now, when I was at university, I thought, I'm going to use these every single day of my life, and it turns out that I don't. Do you happen to lean on them at all much nowadays?
Now, I look at it this way, and where the bachelor's degree with the mathematics, it's the critical thinking.
Yeah.
It's the analytical thinking, because where a lot of my counterparts may give up, or they may just sit back and wait and say, well, nobody has told me how to, and nobody has showed me how to. Those of us that have the science and the math background will actually kind of huddle and say, okay, how are we going to do this? Let's figure this out.
Yeah, I find that
Now, with the counseling degree, yes.
Yes, you do.
I use that all the time, not only in how to get along in the workplace and understanding different personalities, but there's always somebody that reaches out for assistance that may be going through a difficult time.
Yeah, that's wonderful feedback. I often think about, you look at the entire curriculum of a degree, and you think to yourself, what are the core parts that I can take away from this? And, just knowing that there's still something valid for you, and especially your counselling, that's wonderful. Whereabouts are you located, and whereabouts are you doing your thing?
Okay, let me mention this, because once we started the video, your volume went way down. Can you turn your volume up just a bit?
Hang on, just hold on. How's that? Is that better?
Yes, very much better.
Okay, sorry about that.
Okay, what was the last question?
I was just wondering, where are you located, and where is your business run from?
I am located in the DC area, DC metro area, and that is where my business is run from.
Fantastic. And do you serve people just locally?
No.
No?
No. Because of the internet, we can now hop on a quick Zoom call, or sometimes when people are traveling,
Yep.
they'll add a day to the front or the back of their trip to try and get some personal development in, to either prepare for what they're going back into, or to decompress from what they were doing here in the area.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? I love how we can knock down the barriers also with the internet. This whole barrier to entry has really changed the way we do business, hasn't it?
It has a great deal.
And I'd love to talk for the better. I'd love to really go deep into what services you provide, but let's talk about your authorship.
Okay.
Where did this all start from for you, and how was it that you became an author?
The inspiration for the book actually came from a day at work, in where I kind of like flippantly and really quickly
Yep.
shared one of my childhood traumas, and I didn't think much of it. But then throughout the coming weeks, different people begin to come to me one-on-one to share their own personal traumas or difficulties with family members. They were asking for assistance, or they were asking, really, how is it that they could get to the place that I was in? Because it didn't emotionally affect me anymore. And I could talk about it very fluidly without being negatively emotionally affected.
Yeah, yeah. It's that emotional charge when we go through trauma. I think we've all suffered trauma in some way or another. It's a process,
Mhm.
isn't it, to work through it?
It is, and everybody has a story.
Mm.
It's some may be more traumatic than others, but that we're all affected in the same way.
Yeah, yeah. If we're living and breathing, we're going through experiences each and every day, aren't we?
All right, you're either in it, going into it, or just coming out of it.
That's a wonderful way to look at it. So the name of the book that your latest book is Family is Not Everything? Is that right?
Yes.
Can we deep dive into that book and I guess unwrap it a little bit?
Sure. In the book Family is Not Everything, I share a 7-step method that people can use to disempower the emotional baggage that was left from a lot of the traumas that they've gone through. And I share my own personal trauma stories in the book so that people have stories they can relate to,
Hmm.
but also the steps to help them heal. So in each chapter of the book, where I share a story, a lesson learned, and then a technique, an activity, and an affirmation that can be used by the reader to, as I said, disempower the power that that emotional baggage that was left from the trauma has over them. So whether they have negative self-talk that is left over,
Yes.
or, and they can't, that negative self-talk is really a heavy hitter, because it's self-doubt, it creates limiting beliefs. And there are ways that we can unlock that and turn it around so that we can replace the negative thoughts with positive thoughts and move on with our lives.
Because you hear that, if we stop and think about that ongoing chatter that we have in our minds, that's omnipresent, isn't it? It's always
Yes,
there.
it is. Yes, it
Somebody recently in a conversation I was having referred to it as squashing ants. You know,
is.
because they're little tiny thoughts that are just flickering away, and I guess part of this book is about turning those negative components into positive outcomes, aren't they?
Yes, very much so.
Is that something that takes a lot of time to write for you, or because of your experience with it? How long did it take to put together this book?
Well, it took me about 2 years to write this book because I wanted to be, I didn't want to just share stories. It was not intended to be a memoir. I know my story, so I definitely didn't need to just put them in a book for the world to see. I wanted it to actually help somebody.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I kept impressing upon everybody that came in the circle to help me, editors, graphic designers for the cover, that this is not a memoir. Even though some of them tried to push me in that direction,
yeah.
this is a self-help book. The
Self-help.
affirmations, the techniques, the activities, and the lesson learned sections all set them apart from a memoir.
Yeah, can I just mention? I saw some of the testimonials that you received as a speaker, and this year, 2019, you're one of the on the watch list of a particular award that you had won. So congratulations on that. That's a wonderful
Thank you.
achievement.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Yes.
I wanted to acknowledge that because there are times where we think, is all of our hard work for something or for nothing? So it seems as if you're making some great progress with it.
Yes. Thank you.
Are,
Thank you.
are you doing any speaking that's coming up?
Coming up, actually this Saturday, I am hosting and moderating panels for an event called Heal Fest here in the DC area.
Right.
And it's a number of mental health specialists, therapists, survivors that are all coming together to give presentations to help people with their everyday mental health.
Yeah, that's such an important thing. I noticed that you also work with children in this respect. Is that right?
I worked with juveniles in the past, but lately it's just been adults.
Okay, yeah, because we're all at different stages of I guess perceiving the world and the trauma that we go through, aren't we?
Yes, we are.
I'd
We
love
are.
to. I'm looking at the bio here, and one of the things it says here is about identifying and disposing of the one thing. Can you elaborate a little bit on what that actually means?
That one thing is toxic and negative behavior,
Oh,
not only within ourselves,
yep,
but also in the people that we have in our circles. One of the activities that I talk about in my book is your circle of influence.
yep,
And if you think about, there are 5 rings or circles around you. If there's somebody that constantly brings critiques, insults, negativity into your inner circle, then
hmm,
perhaps it's time to move that person from an inner circle to a third or a fifth circle.
yes,
And
yes,
the same thing with ourselves. As we become more self-aware and we can stop all of that negative chatter, we can stop the negative self-talk, then we can get rid of the toxicity that we carry with us every day, because it eats away at not only your emotional health, but also your physical health. So
yes.
all around, you're a healthier person, the quicker and the more you can get rid of the toxicness in your life.
Yeah, I'd just like to go a little bit deeper into that. I found it very difficult when I was a bit younger, in fact, a lot younger, to actually move away from people who I thought were a positive influence in my life. How do you help people identify those toxic individuals in their circles?
Well, one of that activity actually is, I ask people to, throughout a month, maybe a month and a half,
Hmm.
write down on a piece of paper all of the names that are in your phone, the names of the people that you're around on a daily basis.
Hmm.
Every time you're around someone, write their name down and an emotion next to their name as to how they made you feel. Happy, sad, confused, lost, dismissed, disrespected, whatever it is.
Yep.
Write it down. Keep track of that for about a 30, 45-day period. And then in your quiet time by yourself, sit down and look at that list. When you go through that list and you look at the people that give you the negative emotion each and every time you are around them, then it's time for you to decide whether or not you want to continue to make them happy or to keep yourself healthy.
Yeah. I'm sitting here thinking, well, what happens if it's somebody who's actually in your family circle?
That's a tough decision to make. But again, are you going to keep them? Because you keep them happy or you keep yourself healthy. And what I mean by that is, you can start with a conversation, because it could be that the person is very well intended and doesn't know that they're making you feel so bad.
Yep.
So you go and you sit down with this person and you have that conversation, and then you sit back and you observe their behavior from that point.
Yep.
You make a decision and you set your boundaries. How many times are you going to give that warning?
Yep.
From there, how many times are you going to continue to accept that behavior before? You don't really have to cut them off just yet. If it's emotional, you can take them again, like I said, from that inner circle
Yep.
to one of those outer circles.
So still have them there, but just a little bit further away from your core group.
Yes.
Is that I think about we talk about the one thing here, but there seems to be many one things that you can choose. Is there a sort of is there sort of like a priority to work through? Is
The priority would be safety and security.
right.
If you're being physically abused, then I would beg you to seek safety for yourself first.
Right.
And if it's you and children, safety is paramount.
Hmm. Hmm. And I mean,
From there,
it seems so obvious, but maybe it's not to some people.
yes, yes. So the physical abuse is first. From there, emotional.
Hmm.
And it's, how detrimental is that emotional abuse to you? How quickly can you replenish what that person robs you of? So if they rob you of self-esteem, they rob you of self-respect, when you're not around that person, how quickly can you replenish that? Some people can just really flippantly ignore it, pass it off, and as soon as the person is gone, so is the sentiment
Yes.
that is left behind. Some people are really good at that. Others will sit and lament on it for days.
I know somebody exactly like that.
And that is not a good thing at all. That is not a good thing.
Yeah. So are there any other levels? Like obviously you've got your emotional, then your physical safety, and then your emotional level. They're really the two main ones, aren't they?
They're the two main ones, because then within emotional, you have the psychological and the financial.
Right. Yep. Well, finance is obviously always going to be a very big question, and that sometimes is the seed of much discontent in relationships. And just as an individual, if you have money stresses, that can really have an impact on your outlook on life, can't it?
Yes, it can. It can also be used to control another individual.
Ah, yes. So something to look out for there. And in terms of negativity as not your friend and limiting its access, does this come back to this idea of squashing the ants we talked about earlier?
Yes,
Right.
it does. And when I say negativity, like you said earlier, what if it's a family member?
Yep.
Because negativity can come towards you in such a seamless manner. It can be someone that you think is very well intended, that is showing you love. No, they don't mean it like that. And you begin to doubt yourself. You begin to insult yourself. You
Mm-hmm.
begin to belittle yourself, all because of your love and adoration for this person. But as an adult, it's time to sit down and take stock of those thoughts and whether or not those people are truly well intended.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because if you reflect on, I guess, some experiences that both friends and maybe some of my family members have gone through, you find that you reveal certain tendencies like narcissistic tendencies and, things
Yes.
that you don't have control of. And this is why this conversation is so powerful, Anita, in terms of going, hey, look, it's actually not me. It's actually somebody else's concern for them to manage. And the
Right.
best thing I can do is empower myself and take that step away. So that's amazing content that you've shared, and I'm sure a lot of people on the show have taken some amazing thoughts away for them to try and follow up on. I know that you have authored some other books. Could we talk about those a little bit?
The other book is titled The 7 Simple Steps to Beat Emotional Baggage.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that is a 7-step sequential method that somebody can walk through to help themselves overcome emotional baggage.
Yeah. Yeah. So what is emotional baggage? How do you define that?
Well, I define emotional baggage as anything that is disrupting you from being your authentic self.
Yeah. Yeah. Something that maybe makes you unhappy, like you have a cloud over your head and you don't know why.
Yes, unhappy, fear, again, the negative thoughts, the negative self-talk, um, any limiting belief, fear of moving forward, experiencing anything new, you constantly talking yourself out of going after that one dream. Everybody has a dream inside of
Yes.
things, goals that they would like to achieve.
Yep.
If you're constantly talking yourself out of that,
Yep.
first I would ask, whose voice is that you're hearing? Because a lot of the times, our self-talk as an adult comes from what our parents and elders said to us when we were younger.
Mm-hmm.
Whose voice is that? Once you put a name to that voice, then we can begin to determine how true those statements are. For instance, I had a client at one time that she was fiercely of the belief that she could not keep a plant alive.
Oh.
And it seems simple, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It does.
But when we dug down into it, it was connected to a project that she had as a Girl Scout. And as a 7, 8-year-old, she didn't keep this plant alive. And then from that point forward, her aunt and her mom continuously said this to her as she grew up. So she internalized it.
Oh.
Now, if you look at that and from the standpoint of what if there's somebody in a child's life that begins to tell them they're not pretty or they're not worthy, or
Mm.
whenever they ask to go play with their classmates, they're told their classmates, oh, they don't want to be bothered with you. Things of that nature. All of that becomes the negative self-talk that we have as adults. So in the 7-step method, the first step, I ask people to sit down and write down stories, events that impacted them that they still remember. Doesn't have to be long paragraphs or books. Just needs to be a line or two, enough that you remember what that incident was. That's in life mapping, and that is from their current age back to age 0, as far back as they can remember.
Yeah, I have. Sorry, I just had this one thought. These are learned behaviours that we have to unwind, aren't they? We have
Yes, very much so.
we have to undo them. And the other thing, sorry to interrupt you there, was
No problem.
this locus of control, isn't it? It's either external to you or you do control it and it's internal to you.
Yes, very much so. Exactly.
Please
Exactly.
continue.
And then in the second step, that second step is called track and trace.
Yep.
That's where I asked them to sit down and journal for about a month or two. And that journaling isn't this is what I did today or this is how I felt. It's a lot deeper than that. And then they're answering the question why for every decision they make throughout the day. Why did they choose to wear the outfit they did? Why did they choose to take the route they did to work? Why did they choose coffee over tea? And then deeper than that as they make more decisions throughout the day.
Yep.
Because what happens is we can then begin to connect the decisions that they make now to the events that happened in their past.
And then go through that unlearning.
Right. Once people can see those connections, it unlocks that limited belief and it loses all power.
Yep. So I'm looking at this and I'm thinking to myself, you talked about this a client, and I think to myself, what if this was something that I really was struggling with? Do you think that people should try and do this on their own if they want to go through this personal development journey? What is your take on that?
I find that it's better than doing nothing at all.
Yeah.
To start with self-help, because a therapist, a psychotherapist, a psychiatrist can't help you if you haven't accepted that you have this issue.
Yeah.
So in the quietness and in the privacy of their own homes,
Mm-hmm.
they can start with these self-help steps and then be honest with themselves. If need be, they can move on from self-help to a counselor, to therapist, psychiatrist, whomever it is that is going to help them overcome the baggage that they have, the limiting beliefs, or even some of the limiting behavior that they have.
Yep. Yep. And we all have them, don't we? I think you'd be in denial if you said to yourself you didn't have a limiting belief in some respect.
Yeah, at varying degrees, we do. We all have them.
So if people want to work with you, where are they going to find you?
They can find me on social media platforms, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook.
Yep.
At the handle That Anita Live. Or they can go to my website, That Anita Live, and send me an email at Anita@thatanitalive.com.
That's fantastic. So for everybody who has spent the time with us on the show today, I'm sure you've taken away some wonderful insights. Anita, thank you so very much for spending some time with me on the My Future Business show today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks for joining us today. If you enjoyed the call, then make sure to subscribe, leave a comment, share us with your friends, and book your spot on the show at myfuturebusiness.com/interviews. And if you're looking for solutions that will help grow your business, then visit myfuturebusiness.com/shop.